And she said it had more to do with focusing on your PhD while friends are doing other things, other life milestones, such as buying houses,
Mm.
traveling, and marrying. So, what she specifically said was, for me, it was being a student during the formative adult years when your friends are working, making money, and owning houses.
For sure. Welcome everybody to the 65th episode of the Struggling Scientist podcast. We are a podcast by scientists, for scientists, anybody science adjacent, and perhaps even hobbyists. My name is Suzanne and I'm here with my co-host, Jayron.
Hi.
So we all know that doing a PhD has its fair share of pros and cons. But what you might not be aware of are the hidden costs of doing a PhD. Things you aren't aware of when you start, but will find out along the way. We recently asked our audience about the hidden costs they discovered, and we got quite a few interesting answers that might help the next generation of PhD students. This will certainly be an interesting episode, and we hope to shed more light on the often ignored or unrecognized struggles of PhD students. So let's start!
If you like this episode, please subscribe or leave us a rating on your favorite podcast listening platform. This really helps us out and makes this podcast possible.
For sure. So the hidden cost of doing a PhD. With this we mean any drawbacks that are not obvious and that you only really find out about when actually doing a PhD. And we believe that these hidden costs should be talked about more so that future PhD students can make a really informed decision about whether they want to do a PhD, but also that if you're doing a PhD, that you can be more aware of these pitfalls and maybe avoid some of them. So we posted the question, what has been a hidden cost of doing a PhD you weren't aware of when you started it? On our social media channels, and we got a lot of responses, over 150 of them. So we have a lot to work with this episode, and we grouped them together in 5 broad categories. Jayron, which ones are those?
Yeah, so those are financial, relationships, mental health, work-life balance, and personal milestones.
Yes. So we'll talk about all of them. Now, we won't be able to mention everybody who responded. We will highlight some of you, the ones that stood out to us. But we, of course, want to thank all of the academics that took the time to respond to the question. And hopefully, the next generation of PhD students can really learn something from your experiences. So, Jayron, why did we ask this question in the first place?
As with many things, it first started out with just mostly personal curiosity on my side. But, I would say it also had to do with often feeling like people tend to gloss over some of the struggles that are associated with doing a PhD. Whether that's, that it's difficult to post about it online or really talk about it in more depth with people in certain circumstances. I don't know. But I figured I would just give people the opportunity to air their grievances, as it were, online by just asking it out and see what comes out of it. Little did I know that we were going to get over 150 replies, so people really had a lot to say, and that works out great for us that we get to share what they want to say.
For sure, it's definitely a topic that a lot of people also feel strongly about. So, important topic to make an episode about.
Yes.
So, the first category was
Financial.
okay.
So one of the big things people mentioned under this category and got the most likes and most people agreed on out of everything was not saving up for your retirement.
Mm.
This came to us via 2 different people on Twitter, Dr. Lisa Monroe and Julie LeBerkin. Sorry if I'm butchering that. And yeah, they mentioned not saving up for your retirement. You can expect to be approximately a decade or more behind your non-PhD peers in retirement savings, and they don't hear enough people talking about this either. And I do have to say, maybe this really differs depending on what country you do your PhD in. I think for us in the Netherlands, we do sort of have retirement savings with our PhD.
Yeah, the standard government one.
Yeah, exactly. And I think perhaps in the US, that's not the case indeed, or other countries maybe as well.
No, for sure. And that's not something that you really realize when you start out.
Yeah, it's sort of this invisible thing, right? And it takes years to build up and time to accumulate. Like being a decade behind really, really hurts you when you're
for sure. Yeah.
need to retire.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, that's definitely an important one. Not short term important, but definitely long term important for. Yeah.
Yes. And the other financial one was funding worries. I have to say, this seems a little bit more obvious when it comes to the PhD.
Mhm.
but constantly having to worry about like if you have funding for your next year of your job and life,
Mm.
basically, is definitely one of the big worries that many PhD struggles with.
Yeah, I can imagine indeed, like, if there's only funding for 3 years, but you have a 4-year program and suddenly,
Mm,
that's a bit awkward from time to time.
yeah, but a little bit more talked about than retirement for sure.
Yeah, but indeed, it's more talked about. But I think I think at least in my case, like I had a fully funded PhD. I sort of took that for granted, I guess.
Mm,
I can't imagine also having to maybe write a grant or for worry about funding
for
on
sure.
top of everything else.
No, indeed.
Yes. So I guess that brings us then to our next category, which is relationships.
Relationships.
Yeah, so this is a
Hmm.
pretty broad one, but so one of the big comments that people said here had to do with not giving enough attention to friendships or simply not having enough time to hang out with friends and be a good friend in return to them.
Mm.
This was posted by Rebecca Chloe Brown Tomei, and she specifically said, "My friendships, I'm in my mid-30s, so most folks I know are working stably and have families. I no longer give them the attention they deserve because I'm so tired from working and studying."
Oh, that's definitely a good one.
Yeah.
I can also imagine that having to move a lot is
Mm,
a big problem for friendships.
yeah.
I also know my friends from university are basically in different countries at this moment,
Mm,
or in different cities, at least all over the country.
yeah.
And that also definitely doesn't help. Although we try to keep in contact, of course.
Yeah, I'm grateful that we do have like those options, like those digital options, like a Zoom or a Skype or whatever, or calling. That still helps, but it's not being there in person with the people and hanging out or
True,
grabbing a drink or whatever.
true.
So,
And I can definitely imagine being in different stages of
mm,
life.
yeah.
I recently had a bachelorette party where it was all about being a new mom, and I couldn't relate at all.
Slightly different stage of life, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, and the second one from a relationship was also how much time you spent away from family. And this was put forward by, among others, Andres Sao Tsang. And he says, time away from family. 2 years after I started my PhD abroad, I could finally visit home for the first time. I was shocked when I saw how much my parents had aged. And yeah, especially if you are abroad, I can completely imagine how difficult it is.
Mhm. Yeah, just being also homesick, and maybe
Mm,
you just have like a really good connection with your family and stuff like that. And yeah, you might be your parents might be at the age where stuff starts happening, and you might not be there for them at that moment.
And of course, you don't have to do a PhD
Mm,
abroad. You can look for something closer.
yeah.
But I would say I often hear that it's recommended to do one abroad or then do a postdoc abroad if your PhD wasn't abroad because it increases your chances of finding a future job, PI space, getting tenure track a lot
Mm,
if you can add on your CV that you did something abroad.
yeah. I don't know if that's also dependent on like what university or whatever. I guess I assume so, but yeah, no, it's definitely tough to sort of say goodbye to everything and start almost over with also with your friends, with your connections, with everything abroad while doing a PhD.
I think it's also often sometimes splits up families
Mm,
where if you have to do a postdoc for a couple of years in a different space, your children and your family cannot always move with you, or you might not want that
mm.
if it's only for a couple of years. It's a difficult job that has very little stability in terms of location, which indeed impacts family and friends a lot.
Yeah, and I mean also maybe coming back as well to friendships and stuff like that. During your PhD, you might also have some time that you work in a different group abroad.
Mm,
I know at least one PhD student in our department. I think did stuff in either New Zealand or Australia for a couple weeks. Some experiments there, or some experiments in the U.S. as well. And let's say if you have a partner or whatever, like yeah, that's
mm,
also just a bit like not really long distance all the time, but like impromptu, I guess.
yes. Now, of course, you do make new friends in the lab, and especially if you have a lab with multiple international PhD students, you can get like really fun relationships with that. At the same time, it often turns into most of your social life being
Mhm.
in the lab, which is also not always the healthiest thing. Um,
Yeah, I think we'll get into that in a bit of like
mm,
there's no real boundaries then anymore. Oh,
no, indeed.
yes.
Let's move on to mental health.
Yes. Yeah, so the next topic that got brought up by uh, one of the accounts we love following on Twitter or X now is from Academic Encouragement, and he said that this really affected his confidence. They said the PhD really took an emotional toll on them. There are millions of ways the PhD will affect your confidence, no matter what you do, and often the outcomes of the work you put in is outside of your control. Learning to let go and trust in the unseen has helped, but was a steep learning curve for me.
Yes, so much luck is involved and
Hmm.
so little is in your control. And then you also have PIs that have, or your professors that have an opinion about thing, and usually their say goes. And I can definitely see that that confidence can be affected there.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, all you can do is put in the effort that you are able to do and just try your best and stuff like that. But
Mm,
sometimes it's just the hypothesis is wrong.
yeah.
There's nothing you can do about that. Sometimes you don't get the best project in the group that you know.
Mm.
And
And sometimes it's a real good moment for personal growth.
mm,
It's usually not fun,
yeah,
which personal growth rarely is. And if it really starts affecting your confidence, then that's definitely a not good effect of the
yes,
have doing a PhD.
yeah,
Okay, the next emotional effect is that you can also become very lonely, which of course also has to do with not having friends or not having your family close by. And Lucy Coster, one of our followers, said, I wasn't aware of just how lonely it would be and the mental toll of that. But saying that, I do have some wonderful colleagues who support each other to combat this. Well, there you have the wonderful colleagues again, that you can build really cool friendships with the other members in your lab.
mm, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Like ultimately, you have to make friends with your colleagues. You
They
work.
understand also what you're
Yeah,
going through the
exactly.
most.
You have someone to talk to who understands indeed what you're going through.
Mm. But
And
at the same time, the difficult thing about academia is that there also a little bit of competition almost.
mm,
Sometimes a lot, sometimes just a little.
mhm,
You're always comparing yourself to these other people. How are they handling the stress? How are they handling the grant writing? Oh, they have managed to write a paper in a month, and I'm taking months
mm,
to even get to this point. Um, so that comparison can also make you feel really lonely,
mm.
because it makes you feel very isolated, and I guess also your confidence can get lost from that.
No, for sure. I mean, that's the thing with the PhD, right? Like you don't get to see everyone's failures all the time. You just get to see like they published a paper or
Mm,
they won a prize for giving a presentation and stuff like. You get to see the highlights, but not really all the problems, unless they specifically tell you that.
yeah.
So yeah, no, it can definitely it does get lonely. Luckily, we have each other.
For sure.
Yes. So
Speaking of relationships built in the in the lab that are unhealthy.
unhealthy. I am very healthy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, me too.
Hmm. Yeah. So I guess the last topic that got brought up for the mental health section is sort of more. It's a pretty not really exhaustive list, but it does hit quite a few different things related to mental health. And this was from, hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly, Karolje on Twitter. And they said the mental health in general, so lack of motivation, chronic exhaustion, stress related GERD. I have never held something in so much contempt before as my PhD. If I could go back in time, I would tell my younger self to not do the PhD. It's not worth the psychological and physical damage it's caused. So definitely an
Mm.
intense PhD journey for them.
I think most PhDs after the PhD have to recover a bit.
Yeah, I can imagine that, especially by the time you actually have to do your defense and everything, and
Mm.
there's just so much going on.
Well, you also sort of drag yourself forward to that point and
Mm,
just try to keep going because you're almost done, and then
yeah,
that toll comes at some point.
Yeah, and I think in our cases, we were lucky enough to have like great colleagues, like,
Mm.
that we can talk to and stuff like that. But imagine if you're in a lab where it's just hyper competitive, you can't trust
Mm.
anyone. The PhD is already tough enough. Like, the more stuff you add on top of it, it doesn't help.
No, for sure.
Yes. Yes. So moving on then to the next topic. Well, we hinted at this before: work-life balance. So the first comment in this topic that got brought up was sort of the blurred boundaries between work life. And this was from one of our favorite accounts on Twitter, Research F PhD. And they said, at the start, I enjoyed flexibility, working anytime, anywhere, which led to the unintentional abuse of my personal time. As a result, my hidden cost was the blurring of boundaries between personal and professional life, where working nights or weekends was considered normal.
Yes, that's for sure a difficult one. And I also love the flexibility.
Mhm.
But I also love the flexibility we have in podcast making, and that also tends to take
Mm.
up way more time than it should.
It's a skill you need to sort of learn to
Mm,
set your boundaries a little bit, I think, as well.
but it's hard.
For sure. I mean, especially in our cases where we have cells in the weekend that need to be passed, right? It's like,
There's always a reason, and there's
mhm.
always the thought that your experiment will just be finished a little bit sooner if you
Yeah.
just do this. And I mean, at some point, we talked about this in the cursed experiment.
Mhm.
You were in the
Oh,
hospital,
yeah.
and I
Oh, that.
thought that the next morning I still had to go back to
Mm.
save my cells,
Yeah.
and they all had fungus, so I was there for absolutely nothing, and I was completely destroyed.
Mm.
It's not worth it.
No.
It's not worth it. Um, that week that you save
Mm.
that you're not saving it, it will cost you somewhere else.
No, exactly. I mean, it's sort of you need to balance out like how much productivity you want to try and get in or try to squeeze in, like save an extra day if you do one more experiment or something
Or
faster.
if you just stay a little bit later,
Yeah.
but you will pay the price also in your energy levels and your motivation for it,
Mm.
and it will come back to bite you.
I mean, the more time you're spending on your research, the less time you're spending on, I don't know, like staying healthy, eating right, getting enough sleep, your friends, right? So it comes at a cost somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know. So the best thing you can do is try to figure out how to set those boundaries. And the PhD is unfortunately, is the way that we often tend to learn this the first go around, just because I guess we come from our bachelor's or our master's and start our PhD where there was no real work life balance. It's studying.
Hmm.
You know.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay, the next one is an interesting one. Was brought up by Geraint Jenkins, I
Mm.
think that you pronounce it like that. And he said that the biggest hidden one for me was not having the time to get CV/covering letters together and apply for jobs. Writing a PhD thesis and applying for jobs at the same time was beyond my ability, so I had to start the job hunt post PhD, so no wage. Luckily, I had support, others won't.
Mm.
I can definitely imagine. You're already so overwhelmed with everything that you have to finish up and the deadlines you have to make and the people you need to email and everything, keeping everything together of something that you're literally doing for the first time ever
Mm.
with very little administrative support, also often, is a lot. And I mean, putting off starting even CV and cover letters, mhm, I feel that.
No, for sure, right? And I mean, it's sort of like there's, how should I put this? The thesis deadline, the writing, you need to be doing this. You're probably already behind on some deadlines.
Mm,
It's sort of like you're trying to just dig yourself out of that hole to finish this thing that you sort of put off okay, but what's the next step, right? Like that bridge, we'll cross it when we
yeah.
get to it. And
And
unfortunately,
it's also not something just what to put on your CV in
mm,
terms of skills that you've learned during the PhD. That's not something you get help with or
no.
get taught or if is any focus on during the PhD. It's just like write your thesis, get those papers out, do the research. What comes after is basically not academia's problem.
No, exactly. I mean, for most of us, like the last time we wrote a cover letter or prepared a CV was
It
when
was
we
for the
applied.
PhD.
Yeah, exactly, right? And there probably didn't have all that much to put on it. And
But that was also a very specific CV
mhm,
where you just wanted to show what type of methods you had
mhm,
done. If you could qPCR, if you had experience with Western blot, things like that.
Yeah.
Nobody is interested if you are living academia that you can do a Western
Yeah.
blot. So the CV has to look very, very, very different, and that's difficult.
Yeah, and I mean, probably that will require looking up online, learning about how to make a proper CV or a proper thing, and seeing what people are doing nowadays 4 or 5 years after the last CV you wrote. So yeah, I mean, there's also just it just takes a lot of time.
For sure.
Yeah. So that then brings us, I guess, to our next, and I think also our last topic for this episode, the
Mhm.
personal milestones. And the biggest one here was from Tanya. And she said it had more to do with focusing on your PhD while friends are doing other things, other life milestones, such as buying houses,
Mm.
traveling, and marrying. So what she specifically said was, for me, it was being a student during the formative adult years when your friends are working, making money, and owning houses.
For sure.
Yeah, it's
Wouldn't we all love to own a house?
no, for sure.
But then you don't know where you will end up, so you have no clue where to buy a house. And
Yeah,
then
exactly, right? I mean, especially if you want to stay in academia after your PhD, like, what do you do? Like,
Mm,
can you buy a house? I mean, you might suddenly, if like in our case, we knew a PhD student who bought a house in the Netherlands and then moved to the US.
for sure.
So yeah, it's definitely a difficult thing,
And that's only in case you have money to buy the house,
exactly,
which you
like,
usually don't.
yes, that's like the next level of
Mhm.
yeah. But at the same time, we've also heard of PIs who are postponing or postponing like having children as well. So
Yeah, because the gender track process is also intense
yeah,
and
yes, for
yes,
sure. So I don't think it necessarily
gets better.
that's the unfortunate bit of information that
Yeah.
I don't know how to uh
I also feel I have put off some things
mhm,
during the PhD because I thought that they would come later,
yeah,
and I shouldn't have. I felt like I had to focus on the PhD and on that,
mhm,
but I should have taken more holidays and I should
mm,
have traveled more and I should have done those things also.
yeah. I mean, our only excuse was COVID. I think that did sort of
Mm,
stop some stuff, but
true.
indeed, like we indeed should
But
have.
I had my experiments to finish and my
Yeah,
cells wouldn't survive if I go a week on holiday because then I have to start everything over and it's horrible. So, no holidays.
yeah,
But I do think there are other PhD students who definitely do this better.
for sure. And hopefully, this episode will help them do it better.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We also have another other one from Aporva, and she said that forgetting how fun I used to be was one of her main ones. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think it maybe is related to sort of the friends and not being able to hang out with your friends and stuff like that. Like, right, like you're so busy with your PhD and just doing experiments and stuff like that. And maybe you're a different person professionally than you are sort of privately, with your friends and stuff like that. That you just yeah you don't really get to have fun and enjoy stuff anymore.
mm,
But I'm sort of speculating on what she said.
yes. Well, also just the amount of energy you have left over at the end
Mm,
of the day is also not a lot.
yeah,
Um, so yeah.
yeah, and just imagine taking care of that house or
Mm.
traveling or yeah, babies.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I can imagine those life milestones get put off.
Okay. So those were our five main categories. Of course, in the 150 posts, we had a lot of different
Mhm.
things, but we think they all kind of fell into those five. And we think we hit on some very big and important hidden costs of doing a PhD that people need to be aware of both before and during their PhDs. And of course, these hidden costs will vary from person to person. But if it helps raise awareness about the things that people end up struggling with, then that's very important for us.
Yes. So hopefully this helps. And yeah, if you like this episode, you can follow us or leave us a rating on your favorite podcast listening platform. This really helps us out and makes this podcast possible.
For sure. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, you can reach us via our website, astronomyscientist.com. You can also check out our website for some really cool science inspired merch. And to sign up for our awesome Journal of the Struggling Scientist, also definitely check out our Halloween-inspired, very scary PhD shirt. And you can also follow us on social media. Jayron, which ones are those again?
Twitter/X, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube.
Yes, definitely also check out our now video podcast on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.